Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us here for Casual Conversations with Local Women in Business. We have been doing these webinars all summer, and it's been an honor for me to get to know local women in business better, and hopefully you have got to tune in and hear their stories. We're all living in crazy times with 2020 and have all had to adapt and change as we go along. And so it's been awesome to hear from business leaders and professionals in our community who happen to be women on how that they have adapted and how they've changed these times into opportunities. And so today we're lucky to be joined by a fabulous panel. We've got Jennifer Apple here from CFSB, Lisa Cope with Playhouse in the Park, Carrie McGinnis with Murray State University, and hopefully Kathy's going to join us here shortly from Saputo Dairy Foods. So definitely different industries in our community and different perspectives. So I think we're in for a really big treat today to hear from these women. So I'm going to let them introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about them. And so I'm looking right here at Lisa. So Lisa, if you'll kick us off and just tell us, a little bit about yourself, how long you've been in Murray, and help us get to know you a little better.
Absolutely. My name is Lisa Cope. I'm the executive director at Playhouse in the Park, which is the community theater here in Murray. I have been there 12 years, which always surprises me, and it always surprises people when I say that. It's flown by. I actually live in Graves County, right on the county line between Graves and Callaway. So I was born and raised in Farmington. That's where I still live with my husband and our 16-year-old daughter. We also have a son. He's 25. He and his family live in Nashville. He has my grandbaby. So that's pretty great, having a grandbaby. People told me it would be great, and I just didn't understand that it really is. My background, I went to Murray State for 2 years and then went to another school down in Nashville. And so my background was actually in the legal field. I was a paralegal for many, many, many years, and but also had studied music and had been involved in the arts my whole life. And just life's path kind of led me to Playhouse really unexpectedly. And it has been such a joy to be there and to be a part of this community. Murray is amazing and has taken really good care of Playhouse.
That's great. We won't mention the other university on
right.
the call, especially since Carrie's on here with us. But so Carrie, we'll flip it to you. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, I will. But first I have to tell Lisa, if you've attended more than 2 semesters or more than 1 semester, 2 semesters in a row, you're considered an alumna of Murray State. And you don't have to be a graduate to be a member of the Alumni Association. See, I'm always hustling.
That is good to know. 2 years. I was there for 2 years.
There you go. See, so you don't have to apologize.
I love that. Okay.
Yes, I'm Carrie McGinnis, and I'm the Alumni Director at Murray State. And admittedly, I am the outsider in this group because I do not live in Murray. I actually live in Trigg County. We have a beautiful home on Barkley Lake, and you just can't drag me away from the water. So we haven't made the move to Murray. However, I live in my office many hours of the day, and I've worked at Murray State. I'm going on my 5th year now at Murray State. And I've lived in Trigg County for 18 years. And a funny story about my connection with Murray and ending up here, years and years ago, early in my career, 18 years ago, as a matter of fact, I worked for LaGrange College in LaGrange, Georgia. And that I was in the marketing communications department there. And we kept a solid eye on Murray State. I used to get the publications from Murray State. I would get the press releases from Murray State. And for a long time, I thought to myself, I would love to work there one day. It's like such a great place. And so it's kind of always been on my radar. And when I got the opportunity to come to Murray State, it was the greatest thing in my professional career, honestly. And it's been a pretty long and varied professional career. So I earned my undergraduate degree in broadcast journalism from Northern Illinois University in 1996. And I earned my master's degree in organizational communication from Murray State in May of this year. So I finally got my master's degree taken care of at the ripe old age of 46. So I'm very proud of that with a couple of kids at home. So I spent a lot of my early career in broadcasting. I worked in some major markets. I worked in the Chicago suburbs. I worked in Atlanta, which is the 11th largest radio market in the country. And so I've had some really cool experiences in broadcasting and in journalism, but I made the move to higher education in 2013. And it has just been the best decision I've ever made. I worked for Hopkinsville Community College as a career continuing education coordinator and community education coordinator there before coming to Murray State. So I'm really grateful that my paths have led me here. As far as my family, I have a big, wonderful blended family. My husband is watching, and I like to say we're the modern family, and I'm Gloria. So we have between us, we have 4 kids. So we have Clay and Lacey, Sam and Sadie. We have 2 kids-in-law, Sarah Hobson McGinnis and Brent Jeffries. And then we have 5 grandchildren. Well, I missed 2 of the kids. We have Sam and Sadie, who are my 2. And so between us, we have the 4 kids. And then we have 5 grandchildren. You can tell, like Lisa, I'm really excited about those grandchildren. We have Macy, Micah, Macon, Nora Kate, and Amelia Clay. So we are busy, and it's so much fun, and I wouldn't have it any other way. But I would also like to mention that 7 of our immediate family members are Murray State grads, and we have 1 who is a freshman currently. So we definitely bleed blue and gold.
That's great. I love hearing that. And I know I'd love to hear about the grandbabies too. So I have 3 children, and I appreciate my parents who are wonderful grandparents. So I know that those relationships are really special. And I told you earlier, my mom has all 8 grandchildren right now. So trying to do NTI work with them. So bless her heart. So I understand how awesome grandparents are. So first,
and that's the way of women in business today, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely.
Doing what we can.
Jennifer, we'll flip it over to you to share a little bit about yourself.
All right. Well, as she said, I'm Jennifer Apple, and I work at CFSB, a local community institution, banking institution here. I am a resident of Murray, live right across the street from Michelle. Yesterday I texted her and I said, my grandkids are coming to your backyard. So we have a great little community where we live at. But I've been a resident of Murray for over 30 years. I've been here at the bank in the capacity of Chief Client Officer, but I've done pretty much everything possible in a banking industry that you can do. Been here 37 years at the bank. I've attended Murray State University, go Racers, and my daughter attended Murray State University, graduate from there. So we have, between Terry and I, we have 3 children, 3 adult children and their spouses, and I'm blessed with 5 grandkids as well. Had all 5 of them yesterday. We had parties all weekend, so we celebrated a 7-year-old's birthday and 2 1-year-old birthdays yesterday. So we've had a lot of fun this weekend in the Murray community. So schooling, attended a lot of different banking schools and institutions that have affiliations, but Murray State's our home. So a little bit about myself.
That's great. And so, Kathy, we're so happy you could join us this morning. I'm glad we got all the technology kinks worked out. So if you would, just share a little bit about yourself this morning.
Well, thanks so much for having me, Michelle, and thanks for helping me, Haley and Michelle, with my technical challenges here, out in the boonies here. I do live actually in Tennessee, so we have some Wi-Fi concerns every day. But I am Kathy Stanfa, and I am currently the Senior Customer Quality Manager for the Quality Assurance Division of Saputo Dairy Foods. We are the dairy on Chestnut Street in Murray, but our product goes all over the country. I started at Murray State many, many, many years ago, and I just never went home. I met my husband here, and Rob and I love being in Murray. We did leave for a couple of years. We worked on our master's at Clemson, and then we came back to Western Kentucky, and I worked in healthcare for about 7 years. I love that. But the dairy industry and, using my nutrition background in the dairy industry and business has just been very rewarding for me. And of course, it presented the opportunity to be on the chamber board of directors, which I thoroughly enjoyed. That taught me so much about our community, which I already loved. I just fell in love with Murray the minute I moved here. My parents dropped me off and I just embraced Murray, and everyone in Murray seemed to want to take me under their wing. So how could you not love this place? Murray State was a wonderful opportunity for me, and I just hope that living and enjoying this community, we can, you see the students on the street and you see the people of Murray, and it's such a wonderful blended community. So I thoroughly enjoy living here, and just appreciate that we have this little corner of heaven right here in Western Kentucky.
Well, thank you all for sharing a little bit about yourself. I think it always helps to get to know one another a little bit better and the paths that led us into where we are today. It's always interesting for me, especially with college students or high school students as they're choosing a career path, to know that there's not just one path to a career. There's a bunch of different paths, and sometimes things lead into other things that we never even imagined. So it's just really interesting to hear how people end up where they are. Even for me, my background, Murray State grad, yay, public relations and marketing. This job fits really well with that. And so hopefully, Carrie, once my kids get a little older, I can get my master's too. But you inspire me to do that. So one day, that's on my goal list to do that. But we're going to move now into just talking a little bit about how you've adapted in your industry. We've got banking, we've got higher education, manufacturing, processing, theater and arts. We've all been impacted in our industry from this pandemic in different ways, but we've all had to adapt. And like I said earlier, move those things into opportunities. We all want it to go back to normal. Who knows what normal will look like, if it even goes back. But I just want to hear from you all in your industry. Kind of just share with us your experience going through the past several months, and then what kind of opportunities have you taken advantage or had to adapt or change in your ways that you do business. So Kathy, I'm going to start with you and see if you can share with us a little bit about that.
I'll be happy to. Yes, this pandemic is it's very interesting. It's actually more impactful for my personal life than it is our professional life. At Saputo Dairy Foods, we are a food company. So everything we do for food safety and quality in the production process at our dairy is basically the same, except our employees are now wearing masks. But and in the office, we have to wear masks. We're practicing social distancing and so on. But in terms of production, no change whatsoever. But it has impacted our customer base and the business channel. Like the business channels that I'm talking about would be like retail, food service, national accounts, and co-pack and dairy. And so the retail business, that would be like your Walmart and your Kroger and your Piggly Wiggly and your Story Food Giants. That type of business has just exploded, which is really great. We have, increased sales volume there. But our food service customers, like this would be Cisco, US Foods, Gordon Food Service. You might see those trucks around Murray. The impact to the restaurant industry has just been difficult and challenging, and of course our volume has gone down. And when the COVID-19 first hit us and the guidelines were set by our governor to close restaurants and reduce service hours, then those industries, we had trucks on the road that just had to turn around and come back to our dairy. And what do we do with all this food? What do we do with all this? And then there were food banks that weren't getting the food. So that was just an incredible challenge, more for the logistics of dairy and food service than actually the production part of it. But I think we've managed well. It's just been kind of rocky with handling our customers to make sure they have what they need when we hope to deliver it to them.
Thank you for sharing how it's impacted Saputo. And maybe once we kind of hear from everybody, we can even talk about how it's personally affected us. I know, so much of our lives aren't what we do for a living, and how it has changed, like we were talking about earlier, working women having to now balance education and teaching their children and trying to find babysitters when daycares are closed. It just has really brought up a whole lot of issues for our personal lives, which then affects our professional lives as well. So maybe once we're done with this question, we can move into that as well. But Carrie, I'll switch to you now to hear about Murray State.
Well, I think that it's obvious to everyone here how much a COVID pandemic like this, something we've never seen before, can impact higher education. We were all hit in different ways, but 75% of our revenue at Murray State University is from enrollment. And so when you have to turn around on a dime in the middle of March and pick everybody up and send them home, there's very high concern about what that revenue will look like leading into the future. So that's been a challenge in itself. One thing I'm really proud of is the way the university did manage the move out in March. I mean, it was a week long and it was well orchestrated, and as much as we hated to have to do it, and it's devastating to be on a college campus without any students, we did a really great job of making that turn on a dime and getting our students home and safe. And so then you have to immediately turn around and start thinking about, well, how do we bring them back? So we started having conversations about COVID in February. I was on a COVID task force in the beginning of February, and maybe even late January when we started having these conversations. So really paying attention to what's happening on a global scale and preparing and getting the right people in the room to have those conversations. That's very important. And that's something that I think we did well at Murray State. As far as the Alumni Association goes, in particular, my purview, and then in the broader view, university advancement, of which I am a part of that division at Murray State. University advancement includes branding, marketing, and communication, Office of Development, which is your fundraising arm, and then the Alumni Office. And so we are charged with advancing the mission of the institution. So think about how your donors and your members have been impacted by COVID. You've got your older generation, very well-established donors who are really concerned about their health and their safety and what is going to happen next and whether they can see their family. You've got your C-suite level of donors, those who are leading companies. They're having to make really difficult decisions, and they're watching the markets tank, trying to figure out how to keep their employees safe. You've got your younger generation of donors who are maybe worried about their jobs. They're homeschooling kids and working remotely. And so all those things impact donors to the institution. And then we had to stop and think, is now a good time to even ask? Do we want to actively ask people to give to the institution when they're hurting? And so all those things come into play. And I'm proud to report that although we have seen an impact, of course, as everybody has, our donors don't tend to lean on COVID as a reason not to give. They have continued to be generous in spite of the fact that we spent months unable to actively ask them. They've continued to be generous, which is heartwarming for all of us, and of course, vitally important. But from an alumni relations perspective, particularly, we went with the mantra of pivot, not panic. So you'll see that as a headline in our upcoming Blue and Gold magazine, because that was something that we lived by over the last few months. Pivot, not panic. When the COVID pandemic first started and we were all sent home to work remotely, and we weren't really able to make big asks, and we were kind of trying to figure, we couldn't have events, and we were trying to figure out how to pivot. We spent a solid month, maybe two, the Office of Alumni and Development calling students who had gone home for wellness checks. I mean, talk about a pivot. We are used to dealing with alumni, not students. And so we called over 1,000 people in the Office of Alumni, students, and just checked on them. Are you okay? What do you need? How's it going? And so that was really rewarding for our team, and it was vitally important to the institution. We looked at this as an opportunity to engage populations of people who you can't always get to, right? So you've got people in other countries. We're global. Murray State is not just about Western Kentucky. We are global. So we've got people in other countries. They can't make it back for homecoming. We've got people all over the country that can't make it back for homecoming. So we created a series of speaker events. We called on some of our most distinguished alumni, and we invited people all over the world to reconnect, and they did. It was so amazing. Homecoming week was crazy. I pray that we never have to do 25 virtual events in 1 week again. But we learned that we could do it. And I feel like we did it well. We had participation from 5 different countries and from coast to coast. So all of those things I considered to be an opportunity and a way that we could capitalize on the gifts and talents that we have to bring people to the table virtually, that we have people who aren't afraid to get on and speak and that have the technical skills to pull together all of these things. We have all that here. So we feel like ultimately we saw a lot of positive out of COVID, as hard as it's been. We also figured out that we can work remotely and be pretty dang productive. Our employees can go home and go to the house and get it done. And so I think that's going to have a future impact on Murray State and how we do business. I hope it does, because it allows for a level of flexibility I think that a lot of our employees need. But, you know, when you're working through not only a pandemic, but also a time of social unrest in our country, all of those things have a great impact on our students and on our donors. And so just ensuring that everybody is okay is really a big part of what we've been doing, checking in.
I love that. And I took down a couple of notes, you know, obviously pivot, not panic. I think even on our last panel, we had Trey Lou share how she spent a couple weeks in panic mode, you know, but then you just have to bounce right up and start thinking, okay, how can we make this happen? And you do. I think that you maybe spend a little time wallowing in, oh, what am I going to do? And then immediately you start thinking of solutions. And I love that you guys led with empathy. And I think that that is a great thing. As a Murray State alumni, I really appreciate that you put yourself in your donor's shoes and said, what are their concerns, you know, at all levels. And so I really appreciate that approach. And just want to say kudos to you all for thinking, what are my donors thinking in every kind of season of life, and how is this impacting them, and how can we move forward? So I really love that. So I wanted
to share too, just briefly, Trey Lou, I know she's on here. She said something 2 weeks ago that punched me right in the eyes. And I think I have repeated it to like 10 people in the last 2 weeks because it really was so convicting to me. She said, we need to spend less time in our business so that we can spend more time on our business. Do you all remember that? And I was like, whoa, that is where I've been lacking. We have been so hair on fire in the details, and it feels like we're that way all the time, not just in pandemic mode. So what can I do to better spread what we do across our team and across the college community so that we can spend time, I can spend time on our business instead of in it. And I've really thought about that a lot over the last couple of weeks and how I can do a better job of that. So thank you, Trey.
Jennifer, we'll switch to you. I know banking has been an interesting industry through all of this, very busy. So tell me from your perspective what it's been like.
Well, like Carrie said, we probably started talking about the concept of COVID back in February when signs started talking, you know, when it came up on the news and it was happening overseas and what if it hits here. So I feel like we started with the process, but we didn't start fast enough. Trying to get a financial institution to make a change quickly is like trying to turn a battleship. It don't move that fast, and we've never been one of those that made really quick snap decisions. So we had to move a little bit faster than what we're used to. So we adopted, just like Carrie has a tagline, we adopted progress over perfection, because we're in an institution where everything has to be, I's have to be dotted, T's got to be crossed, and everything has to be perfect in our world. So we had to adopt a different philosophy to say it's okay if we've got a few stumbling blocks, but the main thing is to make sure we're here to serve our clients. So, you know, that was sort of our mantra as we move forward. Yeah, we had to close lobbies down. We're considered an essential business. So then you had all your team members. We're a team of 300 strong, and you had all these people that you had to have extra things for them to do. We had to come up with different scheduling opportunities for them. But what I loved about what happened for us was the fact that we had people doing jobs they had never, ever done before. So many people were doing, of course, PPP was something we'd never heard of. And surprise, the government jumped in and made that available to everybody. So our role, I think, was making sure that the clients who needed that got it as quickly and as efficiently as possible. And we had people working nights and weekends trying to meet those deadlines, here to talk to people to make sure they had all the documentation they needed. So adapting was a big thing here, just adapting to the change of, this may not be what you do every day, but if you can help out here, then you're going to benefit our clients in the long run. So I think that was a big change for us, was making sure it doesn't have to be perfect. It might be a little clunky, and working from home is not a concept that's normal in a financial institution either. It's like, we've never done that before. Should we? Can we? Is it possible? All of those questions. And now we've got real estate lenders that can work from home. I work from home for 3 days. You know, we've made it work. And that was the other thing. We had the infrastructure. We just never put that infrastructure into play to make sure it could actually happen if we needed to send 30 or 50 people to be able to work from home. You know, a lot of us, what we did is we separated. We've blessed that we've got facilities that have space. So instead of sending a lot of people home to begin with, we just separated teams out. And if you worked in Benton, you might end up in Paducah in a meeting room, but we put everybody so they could social distance and we could still accomplish that. And then the ones that did need to stay at home for childcare and things like that, we worked with them to be able to get them what they needed and to allow them to work from home. So it was a both and situation for us, a blend of people working in and a blend of people working at home. But the main thing was just adapting to that change and making sure that as long as everybody was safe and protected and healthy, we all got our job done. And we pulled together like I've never seen us pull together before.
That's great. You and Carrie both mentioned, you know, doing things that you'd never, you know, or typically in your job description. And I think that's part of that adapting, you know, okay, well, I think at the chamber, we just picked up the phone in the beginning and called members. Yeah. What do you need? Are you okay? You know, and you mentioned acronyms. My all got used to IDLE and SBA, PPP, PPE, like how can we do that? And, you know, I was like, oh, I mean, how are we going to get through all these words and help people not be confused? But I really appreciate you guys, and really appreciate the banking industry, like you said, having to adapt, and now kind of moving into the forgiveness side of things. And that presents its own challenges as well. So I know y'all are continually adapting through these changes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
Most definitely. Every day is a new day here when you get information on that stuff.
Yes. Oh, I know. It changes every day, I think, too.
Yeah.
Lisa, we're going to swing it totally to a completely different industry,
right.
Theater and all things, just Broadway. You know, we share in that love. I do too. So just tell us a little bit about Playhouse and how it's adapted during these times.
Yeah. Yeah, we're all about the feels and all the things like that. So we didn't see it coming like you guys did. We were in Tech Week for a show, which is the week of show open. So on Monday of Tech Week, I said to our cast, if people are asking you, it's our intention to have this show this weekend. Tuesday, I said, it's our intention to have the show this weekend. Wednesday, the park closed. So I had to call those people and say, okay, keep studying your lines because, you know, this might be a couple of weeks. So let's stay fresh and then we'll figure it out. And then, oh, this is probably going to go till spring. Oh, this is probably going to go till summer. So it really, it was odd and hard and surprising. And I spent 2 weeks probably just crying, laying awake at night. How are we going to do that? I would call Jennifer is the treasurer on our board, and bless her sweet heart, because I would say, I don't think we're going to make it. I don't know how we can make it. I don't know what we're going to do. This is what we do. Our revenue comes from performing and from all the classes and workshops and things like that we do, that suddenly we didn't see a way to do that at all. So it was some really, really scary days and weeks. And months. But we finally, exactly what you ladies were talking about, you finally just pull yourself up by the bootstraps and say, okay, if we're going to make it, what are we going to do? What's it going to look like, and how do we move forward? And so we worked on some different plans of ideas, ways to bring in some revenue, and we eventually were given permission to perform outdoors, which is a whole new ballgame. How do you pack up stuff and move it to somewhere else? How do you distance performers from each other? How do you distance performers from an audience? All those kind of things. We had to really rethink everything that we do. We're all about being close and hugging and touching. I have a friend who said, he runs a theater up in Lincoln, and he said, our entire business model is bringing as many people as we can into our theater and then sing and dance and breathe on each other. That's what we do. That's our thing. So how do we completely rethink that? So so that was really just a blessing to us to be able to go outside. We went to the amphitheater that's there in the park. The Rotary Club was fabulous about helping us with that. The park folks, I just can't say enough about them, how they stepped up to help us make that happen. And so we did. We just carted all of our stuff down there and set up shop and did that. We learned a lot about all the Zooming and the technical things, so we were able to do some camps and classes and things like that. One of the biggest things that Playhouse does is their summer camp. It's 100 children, and financially it's really important to the theater, but also just it's just a great program, and children learn a lot. And we weren't able to do that this year. We went virtual and did some different types of things, and it worked, and it was fine, and some really good material. People worked really hard to make that happen. It just looked really different, as everything has. Exactly what Carrie touched on. All of a sudden, your fundraising stops, and we asked the exact same questions that you were talking about. Is it okay to ask people for money? That doesn't feel okay right now, and so we didn't for a while, and then finally, and I mentioned earlier just how amazing and precious this community is. People actually started reaching out to us, and you know, how are you? Are you going to make it? What do you need to make it? Here's a little bit of money. I can't do what I normally would do, but here's a check. I just want you all to know that we're behind you. We believe in what you're doing, and so we were able to make it. And then eventually we were able to do a couple of fundraising campaigns. We had just bought a building. You may remember we bought a building in August of 2019, and so suddenly that was really, really scary. Are we going to lose the building? Are we going to, all those questions. And people have just been amazing and fabulous, and we're still here, and we're going pretty strong. And I also just wanted to say thank you to Michelle, to you guys, and Jennifer, and all the folks at the bank. In those early days when it was really scary and we all had 10,000 questions, including what does PPP mean? I felt like every question I sent out, you all responded to just immediately. And we're able to just kind of help calm those fears and answer the questions and get us the information. And it was changing. So Jennifer would send me something and say, start working on this form. And before I could even get going on it, she would say, okay, stop. We're not doing that. It's going to look like this now. So it was crazy, but I'd never felt like I didn't have backup, and I didn't have you folks working. You had to be working 24 hours a day. You just had to be to do what you all did. But it sure made us feel better and got us where we needed to be. So we came through strong. We've learned a whole lot of new things. We know now that we can do things that look different and feel different, and we can do it, and we can do it well.
I think one thing we learned through really hard times is that we can, get through it, and we can do really hard things. And I think until we're presented with those challenges, we don't realize that we have it in us sometimes. And I love just hearing how people have stepped up and they believe in your organization. I love the theater and those things we value about our community and the things that make us unique, and create those opportunities for children and people of all ages to come together through art. I just shared this morning with my friends that video that's going around on Facebook of the ballerina. I don't know if you've seen it. I mean, how beautiful is that? And just how the arts and theater just bring out just beauty in people in our community. And so I'm really appreciative of your organization. And if you're on this, like, please donate to the park. So, and Jennifer as our treasurer is probably thinking, yes. But I wanted to just move into kind of the last portion of our webinar today. And you'll see me kind of under my hair here, this Love Local button. I don't know if you can see it very well, but we have launched a Love Local campaign. We launched our Go Local campaign several years ago, but this is just an adaptation. You know, there's been a lot of hard times in our community this whole year. And we've all had to make changes. And I think sometimes we lose sight of the reasons we love our community. And really this Love Local campaign is more for our businesses than anything else. And the tagline is, put your money where your heart is. We want people to support the businesses and organizations that have been impactful to them and things that they, want to see be here for a long time. And so with that said, I just thought I would love your perspective, your wisdom, and what do you love about our community? And if anything could change that you can think of, or just from your perspective, what are some of your ideas for why you love our community and some ways that we can change as a community and grow to be even better than we are now? I know you all share love. You've all shared that. You've been here 30 years. You've been here just a few years. No matter what your experience is at Murray, you have a personal connection to it. So we're going to start with Jennifer up at the top because I see you right here. Just share with us a little bit about that.
What I love about the community, when you mentioned these questions, it took me a while to think, because the love part's easy. The love part is, I love the people here. I love the university and what it brings, the diversity, the culture. I love the fact that people are very giving and have that servant mentality as far as the servant heart. So that part was easy for me. So then I started thinking about the whole, what I would change about the community. And that one was a little bit harder, because I think it's such a great, small field family community and place where a lot of people want to come live. And we've won awards, for being best places to live. And the university's won all kinds of awards. So it was hard for me to think. And I thought, what would something I'd want to see maybe different or changed? And I thought about our downtown. And I think our downtown's got some room for growth there, because there are some things coming in. But I would love to see it bustling. I think I love it on the weekends of farmers markets, because it's great. And you see all the people and everybody's having a good time, and it gives you that feeling of community. But I'd like to see more of that for our downtown area. And then the other focus, and I guess that's the passion of the parks, is where Lisa and them are at. I think going to other communities, I was in Hopkinsville and actually was at the state parks, or the Parks and Recreation meeting this past week, and I got to see a lot of other communities and what they're doing in their park system. And I think we've got some room for improvement there too. I think we've got a wonderful park system, but I've seen what a lot of others are doing. I think there's some room for improvement there with that as well. So those are the two things that I think I have a passion for, that I feel like there's room for improvement in both of those areas.
Kathy, what about you?
I completely agree with Jennifer about our park system. I've been to neighboring communities, and I feel like our parks could be larger. I feel like they're maybe difficult to access, and you almost don't know how to get there. And then I just feel like they're a little bit small for the size of our community. So I would like to see that. I wish we had bicycle lanes. If you are an avid outdoors person in Murray, Kentucky, typically you like to ride your bike with your family, and it's very, very unsafe in our area because there really aren't bicycle lanes. We don't have any trails for bicycle riding that are, a nice loop. So, in my dreams, I would love for us to have some kind of greenway or some kind of bicycle trail system around Murray, because I know we have so many students who would enjoy that as well as the residents who live here. And then I really would like to see our library to be more possibly updated, maybe larger. I don't really know about the capacity or the size, but I do know the library has many outreach programs. And sometimes I think we have had some maybe delays or some communication issues. I'm not even sure what the real problems were, but I feel like our library could use some upgrading and updating, and I'm sure there's funding there. I hope there's funding there. There might need to be more taxing. I know everything has been much more complicated than I think it is, but our library system I would like to see increased in size and capacity.
Thank you for your thoughts, Kathy. Lisa, I will switch it to you.
Well, I felt just like Jennifer did when I saw that question. Like, here's 10 million things I love. What would I change? And my first thought was, oh, 12th Street. It makes me crazy. But I had thought about downtown as well. Just, I think downtown is great. I love downtowns. Everywhere I go, I try to see their downtown area. I think they're important. I think towns have done a great job kind of bringing them back. I have lots of childhood memories of downtown Murray. The big thing used to be the sidewalk sale that they would do twice a year, and my grandmother would take me. So I think about that every time I go downtown. Those memories just kind of come back. So I had thought about that. And actually one thing that I had thought of kind of pre-COVID is I always wished we had more places that had outside dining, just some really cute little kind of places like that. So we're seeing that, and that's, I think, maybe a positive that has come out of all of this. We are seeing a lot of restaurants do that just out of necessity, but it's turned out to be a really cool thing. And my family and I have taken advantage of that several places because we feel more comfortable being outside. And so that's something I thought I would like to see, and now we are kind of seeing that come to fruition. And I think that's a good thing that's come out of all of this.
Those are great. Carrie, we'll end on you on this question.
Okay. The things I love about Murray, you all have touched on a couple of them. Kathy mentioned earlier when she first moved to Murray and how people just wanted to take her under their wing and help her be successful. I think that's so much ingrained in our community to help people learn and grow and be a part of the family. Lisa mentioned earlier that our community gives. They're givers. They help out when people are in need. They provide a sense of community to wrap around when times are tough. And I think those are beautiful things about Murray State, about Murray, sorry, it's kind of my thing. I love the way that Murray embraces the university and our students. The racer pride and passion is strong. And I tell people all the time that my job as alumni director is not to stoke the passion of our alumni. It's to try and harness it and bend it toward my will, because the passion and pride are there. I mean, the love is there. I don't really have to do a lot there. And so that makes my life and my job interesting and fun and easier anyway. The kindness that we show each other in this community. We have our chamber that's been multiple times nationally recognized, which is super cool. I'm really proud of you guys and all that you've been able to accomplish there. I love the shopping and the eating local. I may not live in town, but I work in town and I play in town. And so, there's a lot of cool boutiques that I think are neat that you find in bigger cities. There's some great dining establishments like you would find in bigger cities, which I love. But to be a part of those at a local level and locally owned, I really enjoy. And I also thought about this a lot this morning as we were preparing for this. I love the number of women that are at the table making decisions in this community. I think that it's a really positive, empowering environment for women in leadership roles here. And I'd like to see that only just continue to grow. But when I think about what we need to maybe work on or consider a change, anytime you have a family that you love and respect, there are always opportunities to hold them accountable, right? When you raise your children, you're going to hold them accountable to be the best that they can be. And that doesn't mean you don't love them or appreciate them, but it's your job as a parent to see them be the best that they can be. And so when I think about that, I think one of the things that we need to do in Murray is to start having some difficult but respectful conversations about diversity and inclusion. I think that there's a place for protest. I think that there's a place for sign holding. I think that there's a place for raised voices when passions are running high. All of those things are part of, are baked into our country and our democracy. But I also think that if we're going to get to a place of understanding and compromise when appropriate and shared vision as a community, that we need to have a conversation, and it might be tough at times, but a conversation about who we are and where we've been and who we want to be. And part of that, obviously, I think is the right thing to do, but I also look at it from a business perspective. So from a business perspective, it's a numbers game. It's a numerical issue, right? Okay, so for the first time in our nation's history, the majority of children under the age 16 are non-white. And so you've got a generation that is the most diverse we've ever seen coming up. Gen Z is also the most passionate about equity and inclusion. So it's not just underrepresented minority young people who are begging for a place at the table. It's the represented voices. It's the people who are at the table and have the privilege that are saying, I want my peers and my colleagues and my friends to be seen and heard too. So if we are going to continue to see Murray State grow, which in turn means that Murray grows, I feel like we're going to need to make sure that we are, our most diverse and our most inclusive self. And that might require some tough conversations. But I think that, when we get to a table and we listen to each other, each of us come to a situation with our own experiences. And so to sit and say to someone who hasn't lived your experience, you're wrong, what you're saying is wrong, isn't productive. So we all need to sit at a table and be able to say, this is my lived experience, and this is what I need and want, and this is why, and then be able to have a conversation so that we can really move forward. And I'd like to see us partner as a community to try and lead that discussion. Another piece to that puzzle is, with the university, international students are a huge part of our enrollment revenue. And right now that is way, way down for a myriad of reasons. But when we do start to see those avenues open back up, we want to make sure that this is where they feel most at home and included and appreciated. And I mean, we're the friendliest town in America. So surely we can, if anyone can do it, we can, right? So I'm not trying to suggest that we're not welcoming and we're not, doing great things and there's anything wrong with us necessarily in the way that we're leading. But I do think that, like I said, when you're a family, you always want each other to do better. And I think to continue to grow and do what we need to do as a community for the next generation of racers and the next generation of Murrayans, then we need to continue that work because they're going to expect and demand it. So I'd love to see us have some of those conversations.
I love those thoughts and really appreciate that. I think a lot of times just having the respect to listen, and have an open mind to someone else's perspective, because we all come from different backgrounds and different experiences. And when you come to the table saying, I'm willing to listen, and have that mutual respect with one another, I think that goes a long way if you just listen. And so I know here at the Chamber that we are wanting to commit to having more diversity and inclusion training for our businesses. A lot of our members are small businesses, and a lot of businesses in our community they don't have an HR department. They're not trained in these things. And so we have a lot of wonderful employees in our community and even Murray State, people who we think could really benefit our businesses going through some of those trainings and how they can implement that. And, that is, when you look at our population, the majority of our community is white. When you look at the census and all that, and as you shared, future generations will look different, and that we'll just chip away at those that percentage. And so how are we adapting to that? And we're doing some workforce initiatives. I know that we're working with Murray State on that to help really get into the schools and try to retain those students into our community, because we want to be a business-friendly community as well. So
yes,
really appreciate y'all's thoughts. And we have a few more minutes, and I know that some of you are probably like, no off-the-cuff questions. But I view all of you as mentors and just women that I really respect. And as a young woman in our community, a part of our young professionals, Haley's on here, recent graduate at Murray State. What is just some advice you could give to anyone, not just maybe younger, but just in general, a piece of advice that you could give? I loved, pivot, not panic, or just something we can embrace moving forward. And I know we're having these conversations with women, and there are some men participating today as an attendee, but just what advice would you give to women in business, maybe not related to COVID or not, and touching sort of on what Kathy said earlier about it really affecting you personally? What are some things that you feel like you could leave us with that are just words of wisdom for us to take with us today? Anybody want to raise their hand to start?
I have. Okay. Oh, yes, I do. I want to encourage my younger self, and I would encourage any female listening to this panel, sit at the table. When you go to your job, your job, wherever it is, whatever you do, you deserve respect. Your voice deserves to be heard. It matters not that you are female. It matters not that you may be the youngest person in the room. Please sit at the table. Do not shrink at the back of the conference room. Go to the meeting, sit at the front of the table, participate, and feel confident. I think this generation coming through might do better than I did, but I felt like I needed an invitation and I really didn't. So I want us to think more forward and lean forward and join the conversation.
I love that thought. And, even at the Chamber, being the first woman in this role in 90-something years, even through the interview process and things, I had so many things said to me about being a woman, and just really seeing people challenged at the face of business, sort of being a female, a young female at that. And so I understand that. There's definitely times I've walked in a room of leaders and felt very under, maybe I should just take a back seat or just listen. But as I've sort of been in this role for several years now, I do feel that our voice needs to be heard. And so we have at the board made a commitment to make half of our board women. So we're trying to chip away at our numbers, and so that we are equally represented in the boardroom. So I really value that our board has set that as a priority. And I know, Kathy, you've been on our board, and Jennifer, so I know you can appreciate that when you served, and sort of we had smaller numbers of women in the room at the time. So I do appreciate your thoughts on that. Anyone else want to raise their hand, dying to share? Jennifer.
Yeah, I would say, like Kathy said, lean in, surround yourself with a tribe of powerful women, because they'll help encourage you through the process. And then take every opportunity that's put in front of you. Say yes and learn through the process. There's going to be challenges, bumps along the road. You may feel like, why in the world did I do this? But keep on keeping on, and make sure that you surround yourself with people that feel that same way.
That's great. I love that.
Those are great bits of advice. It was RBG, I think, that said women belong at any table where decisions are made, right? And so we need to be there and not sitting at the back of the table, but at the front, and lead the way for those who come behind us, right? My advice would be three things, and they are things that I've learned through this pandemic: grace, grace, and grace. I think that we need to have grace for ourselves. I think we need to have grace for our teams. I think we need to have grace for our leadership, for our colleagues. I fear that COVID could have a devastating effect on women in the workforce and women in business if we let it, right? So we need to lead by example. We need to show grace to those who are juggling kids with their job and homeschooling and maybe taking care of aging parents, or worried about parents who they can't even visit because of the pandemic, and whose minds might be in a million different places, but they're doing their best to focus it here. You know, to have grace and be flexible in that, I think is very important. The best advice I ever got, I was at a women's leadership conference in Texas, and someone asked about work-life balance. And the woman who was leading that portion of the program said, there's no such thing. And I was kind of like, ooh, but I've been fighting for it my whole life. You can't tell me there's no such thing. But then she explained, and she said, when you look at a scale, it's like this, right? It's not going to stay like that. That's what we think when we think of balance. What we need to think of is balancing the amount of time that it's like this. And that was so huge for me to think about. Like, I'm trying so hard to make life look like this. What I really need to do is just make sure that I have an equitable amount of time where the scales are not balanced. And that was huge for me and kind of life-changing. So hopefully it will impact somebody else.
Wow, that's really good.
It's not an original thought, so
wow.
I can't take any credit.
I wish I'd known that. Yeah, 25 years ago, right?
Right.
Yeah. You ladies are so amazing. I've learned so much today just listening to you guys.
Oh, so are you.
So I was just thinking back to all the things that kind of wish I had known. And I think if I had one thing, it would be kind of what Jennifer touched on, and that is, do take opportunities, because you don't know where life is going to lead you. And I've ended up somewhere I never would have seen myself, and it's been the greatest pleasure of my life. But it was because some other things that I said yes to, that I tried and that I learned from, and it all worked around. You know, it led me down a path that I couldn't see. So trust yourself, trust your instincts, trust that you are smart enough to do what's being asked of you, that all the things that can just grow you as a person and as a woman, and as any of the things that you want to accomplish in your life, you can do it, and you just need to know that you can do it.
I love that. And, you know, kind of what Jennifer said earlier, having a group of women or even people in your life. I'm not going to lie, there's been so many men in my life who've really helped me and championed me through this. And just those words of encouragement are so a blessing to your life when we all feel like we're struggling or falling apart, especially through COVID. You know, it's been challenging, and we've had to question so many things about ourselves and about others. And just taking the time for some of those truths that you just said and just really thinking through those things. And I love, Carrie, your thought of work-life balance, especially as a mom of 3 young kids. Sometimes you just get overwhelmed, and just hearing, you know, from women who've been there and done that and have been in that season, it means a lot, and it breathes a lot of life into women like me. And so we really appreciate your advice, and I'm sure we maybe should have this group like once a week just for my sanity. I don't know. But just really appreciate you all and appreciate your thoughts. And I took lots of notes, and we're fixing to have some strategic planning here at the Chamber as we think through what 2021 is going to look like. And we do listen and take your thoughts into what we are going to, you know, move and do in the future to move forward. So Haley and I really appreciate your time this morning. And I know we've hit that hour mark, so I hate to go. But we will post this on our YouTube channel if you missed it. So we're going to share it with other people. And join us in our campaign for Love Local, which launches this week. Shop at Holiday Open House this weekend, and help us just support our local businesses and organizations. So have a wonderful day, and we will see you soon, hopefully in person. You know, I know Lisa's probably the same too. You know, all of us are events and things like that. So we hope that normal comes back sooner than later. So have a wonderful day, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you all. Go Racers.
Yes.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Bye.